Am I recording now?
Yep.
Hey, howdy. So I'm going to start by Jeff Richards hasn't shown up yet. If he shows up partway through, we'll let him in. But in the meantime, I am going to answer the questions that I've already gotten on a document. Hey, folks, here's the first question. I'm going to post it in the chat room too, just so you can see it. And oh, it didn't have the whole thing. Why didn't it post my whole question? There we go. Okay, so the question is, I am new to role-playing games in general and looking to get into one. Is Glorantha suitable for a newcomer, and what makes it stand out over the competitors lore-wise? Well, first off, just to confirm, though I do play Glorantha in my role-playing game, this is Lincoln. Can you take the dog's bone far away so she will chew it somewhere else instead of right here? Um,
Come on.
I'm of course more focusing on the Gods War right now. So the deal is that Glorantha is a perfectly. You have to have some world that you're setting your fantasy role playing game in. The advantage of Glorantha is that it has 50 years of history and building up background. Now, you don't have to use all the history. Obviously, you can adjust the history, but it's there and it gives you an interesting world. It's not a conventional Dungeons and Dragons world. Bronze is the main metal. It's very mythic based rather than sword and sorcery based. Um, so it's kind of like if you'd rather play a game in a weird world of old pagan Roman Norse activities instead of knights in shining armor, Glorantha is a pretty good game to try that in. So that's what I would say. When I started playing in Glorantha back in 1978, my we started out we were playing D&D and we got a RuneQuest, the game. We started playing that too. And at the start of the year, we constantly got in other games. We'd play the Fantasy Trip, we'd play the Chivalry and Sorcery, we'd play Travel or whatever it is. We play these along with D&D, and we play them for about a year. Then we go back to D&D. Then we play some other game for about a year. Well, what happened when we started playing with RuneQuest, we started out playing RuneQuest and Glorantha, and then as the year went on, RuneQuest started being D&D and RuneQuest. RuneQuest got more and more important until the end of the year. We were only playing RuneQuest, and I've been doing that ever since. So that is my first question. Okay, the next question is a really easy one. The question is Lankar Mai the son of Zabur? And the answer is no. Zabur is a human, technically immortal, though he in fact has been living for thousands of years. And Lankar Mai is a god. Can I tell us the stories about Chaos God Tyram and Troll's Black Sun? I don't have time to go in that right here, so I guess the answer is yes, I could tell you, but I won't. I'll just tell you this thing about the Chaos God Tyram. Tyram is the Chaos God of the Sun, and he manifests as turning the entire sky into a single eye, with the place where the sun used to be as the pupil of the eye. So he's really scary when he manifests. Okay, is there such a thing as a beginner's guide to Glorantha? Where do you start? I think the best way to start with Glorantha is either to, of course, get my awesome game, Glorantha the Gods War, which will give you a feel for Glorantha right at the roots of it, or get the role-playing game RuneQuest, which has enough background to get you started. Okay, how did Orlanth get connected to dragons? Is the next question. And the answer is that Orlanth killed a dragon and gutted it and used it to accomplish some of his quests. And apparently, killing a dragon gets you, connected to dragons. Okay, the Black Eater, um, the Darkness Secret God. Where does it come from? It comes from the Dark Depths. It's the secret god that Kyger Leader and the other Darkness gods kept hidden away from everyone. It only has appeared a few times in cosmic history. One of the times was when it is the thing that deformed the Trollkin and made them bad. It isn't the thing that created the Trollkin; it just made the Trollkin terrible. And you'd find it in Hell, like you'd expect. Can I give a few examples of how different cultures treat hero questing? Um, Lunar Empire and Corelliary cultures, for example. The Lunar Empire hero quests, they pretty much have it down to a science where they know exactly what to do, and they repeat the hero quests again and again. And this is exemplified in the Gods War game by the fact that um, the Solar culture, which is the one that eventually becomes the Lunar Empire, and for that matter, the moon goddess, who is the other half of the lunar empire and later Glorantha, have hero quests that that are fixed in time. They can just get and they move along it, and they don't have to worry very much about it. They have the great decrees for sky. They have the phases of the moon for moon, so they're like they just have to like fixate the time and go down it in a standard way. The Krolori cultures, I think they mostly try to suppress hero questing, and they don't like it. It has only caused trouble for them in the past, so I think they are not fans. Well, if you're like an important top level person, they might let you do it. Okay, so if I was going to do a lore based reenactment of the Gods War using the Gods War minis and rules, which empire would have won and why? In my opinion, that if you did the Gods War, um, as it would have been in Glorantha, the end result would have been a tie between the Solar Empire, the Sky, and the Storm. And the big losers would have been Moon, which was almost completely suppressed. Uh, uh, well, Moon would have been the biggest loser in that. Invisible God did okay, probably not as well as Storm and Sky, uh, and uh, and so forth. So, and Avalon Tears wanted to ask about the 7 secrets. Okay, well, what do you want to know about the 7 secrets, sir? Uh, Everyone hates looters. Well, uh, not everyone. We were quite surprised. See, Greg and I, when we developed, well, Greg developed the Empires first, and I worked on it with him. Moon did exist. Okay, so Avalon Tears, Moon did exist during the God time. It rose and almost became an element, and then it was kind of nipped in the bud. But there was a bunch of gods. There was a bunch of uh, uh, gods associated with the moon. In fact, one of them survived. Anila, the blue moon, made it into time. So the moon element totally existed in uh, in the Gods War. It just wasn't one of the winners, and so that's why Moon could be created later on, because the idea is that the lunar goddess is actually a reincarnation of Sedenia, the moon goddess of the gods. War. Anyway, Moon existed in the Gods War. They just didn't really make it. They were one of the losers historically. But of course, in your game, they don't have to be losers. And one of the interesting things about the Lunar Empire is when the American, of course, Glorantha came about from Americans, and so we were creating this whole empire. We had the cruel Lunar Empire oppressing the poor freedom-loving barbarians. And when we went to England, we found out that our British fans thought the Lunars were the good guys, and that the evil freedom-loving barbarians were troublemakers and needed to be suppressed. And Greg thought this was hilarious. That the two different cultures had looked at the same information and gotten opposite views of who were the good guys. I guess because we were on opposite sides in the American Revolution or something. Also, the British totally took up on the idea that the Lunars are redcoats, so that makes sense. Chaos was not a bigger loser than Moon, Arthur B. Petersen, because Chaos was still around at the time, and in fact, Chaos participated in the creation of time. So, and everyone knew Chaos was around at the start, and in fact, the First Age ended with a giant war against Chaos. So Chaos made it through. It was not as big a winner as otherwise, and red was their color. Okay, so let's see. Someone else had a question. The 7 secrets. The 7 the 7 secrets. I mean, the 7th. It's not 7 secrets. What it is there are 7 questions that Greg Stafford won't answer about Glorantha. And that was what it was. And of course, then everyone says, what are the 7 questions? And Greg always said, that's one of the 7 questions. What are the 7 questions? So I'll never answer that. So there it is. Yanfal Tarniel tells, yes, well, see, we can't have most of the well-known lunar gods in God's War because although there were lunar entities in the God's War, most of their gods in the regular other Gloranthan games are actually humans who have been deified and who lived during the Third Age. So Yanafal Tarnils was a worshiper of Humacht. He was totally a guy that became a god. So he wasn't around in the Gods War. And same goes for Yara Aranis. A bunch of these things are all humans that became deified. So we couldn't have them in the Gods War game. So, we don't. But we do have we do have a lot of thematic things. That's part of the fun of the Gods War game, is that it feels like Glorantha, and it doesn't do it by browbeating you as you play it. Like, for example, you go into a RuneQuest game and you hate chaos because chaos is all the bad things. But when you play in Glorantha the Gods War, there's a chaos player and he's chaos and he's doing his chaos things, and the other players are like, they start out not knowing that he's the bad guy, but then they say, oh, chaos is a jerk. He's doing, you have the chaos rift showing up and you get mad at him. And Fabian says you can play Chaos and the Gods War the first game when it's possible, because Chaos is a really important part of the Gods War. And in the game, I've heard people say, I've been in games where people are getting ready to play Gods War, and they say, who's going to be Chaos? And I say, you don't have to be Chaos. And they say, someone has to be Chaos. And you don't really have to have someone that's Chaos, but it is fun with Chaos. And other players, even if you're going to all say Chaos is bad, we denounce him, you still want to have him in the game. Other features of the game are similar in this way, because, for example, Darkness, the trolls in... are creepy because of darkness, and in the game Glorantha the Gods War, the trolls are like scavengers and bushwhackers, and they start in hell and they rise up to the surface and take out your temple, and you're angry at them, and they're problematic and terrible. So the trolls are scary. In general, one of the rules about uh, what's Glorantha's eschatology is like mini pages of stuff. So so it can go on forever and ever. But basically, you have this world that appears with the origins are kind of lost, but you have this organized, structured world wrote by the Celestial Art with a spike in the middle of the universe, and then everything is structured and static and stale, and the gods start to fight. And when they start to battle, then it falls apart. And the very first action of the triggers the Gods War is when the storm god Orlanth murders the sun god, and we see this in the game Glorantha, because you start off and the sun god has just gone to hell and he's in hell, and then the darkness character starts in hell, and usually pretty soon the darkness leaves hell and goes to the surface world, and meanwhile chaos starts building up. At first there's no chaos on the map in God's War, but it slowly accumulates and starts getting stronger and stronger, and then everyone freaks out and tries to fight them. And so what you really have in the Gods War is a highly thematic game, which you don't have to know anything about Glorantha to play, but if you play it, when you finish it, you know a lot about Glorantha. So, like, I've had people, my playtest group for Glorantha the Gods War was, at least the main playtest group was people who had never heard about Glorantha and didn't know anything about it. So they're just playing this game and they don't know what this stuff is. They don't know chaos is supposed to be bad. They don't know the sources of the ability. But pretty soon they started attaching personality traits to those factions like you do in any asymmetrical game. And the personality traits they gave the characters was in fact the same as they're supposed to have in Glorantha. Like the Sky God were passive aggressive jerks that sat back and tried to manipulate everything and were early organized. And the Moon Goddess was this Earth Goddess was kind of around heels, trying to marry off to everyone and get us power going. And the Moon Goddess was also a jerk, kind of semi-chaotic. Um, yeah, Stoltzy here 92 says the Gods War is basically if Ragnarok was the creation story rather than the end of the world. That would be correct. Um, the Gods War starts and everything's being destroyed and the world almost dies. And so almost all across Glorantha, the myths that survive the Gods War are of how we survived the Great Darkness. How we became humans, how we stopped having to how we learned to talk, how we stopped being killed by all the monsters, how everyone banded together against the really bad guys to stop them. So everything is how we it comes out of in a sense everything in Glorantha in the RuneQuest game is like a post-Holocaust world, a post-apocalypse, because they had that apocalypse when there was no sun for years and all the plants died and all the gods died and all the people, and they had to survive that. So that's what goes on in Glorantha. And then of course eventually what happens in the eschatology is that the gods all come together and they form a cosmic a council, and they cooperate the best they can to work out how to share stuff so that every god gets a share. Some gods get a bigger share because they won bigger, but they all do things. Why did the Sunstop happen? The Sunstop happened after the Gods' War, and what it was a bunch of things coming together all at the same time that broke the universe and let something creep through that had not been in the universe before. It was in a sense it was like the what had happened during the Gods' War when you have the unholy three, the unholy conspiracy, where three gods got together and said let's let chaos into the world and destroy everything because they were so frustrated with the world they just thought it should all be destroyed. And these are in the game. They're Malia and uh, uh, the Thed and the Mad God, and these get together and they do their thing. And so a lot of the things that we have in the Gods' War, the board game, yeah, they make it. Yeah, the thing they got out of nowhere in the Sunstop was Nice Lore, who everyone decided was chaos. That you couldn't tell he was chaos. So was he really chaos? Well, chaos things worship him and he does bad things and he did some good things. Hard to say. Maybe someday I'll do a game about that. So one of the other things we have in the game is that we have that great compromise where people are forced to cooperate basically in a sense to keep the game going. We have a great council of the gods where things happen. Um, there at the start of the game. There's the spike holding the universe together, and at some point it explodes. Um, and Cryogenic asked, is there any plans to include a solo or a campaign in Glorantha? Well, I mean, the thing is a campaign because it starts with the start of the Gods' War and it plays through until time begins. So if you wanted to play solo, I think you'd have to zoom in and say, we are going to be just the hill barbarians. How do we survive the darkness? Or we're just going to be the Praxian nomads. How do we survive the darkness? So we could do that. We talked about it. Um, your geography of Glorantha is not great. Dragon Pass is on the map, but it's a small area. It's not one of the regions you play in. It's actually in the Gennert's Garden part of Gennertella. So Gennert's Garden existed, and part of it is Dragon Pass, but of course it's not what it is now. Um, so I actually have put together a background to do a game about the Hero Wars and a game about the Gabaji Wars and a game about the Age of Empire, Second Age, but none of these have gone anywhere. Um, to be frank, Glorantha the Gods War is my big stab at doing a part of Glorantha that hasn't been seen that's really important. Because when I was playing RuneQuest back in the day, and even now when you do it, one of the things you want to do is you want to have your cults and worship your gods, and religion is really important in the world of Glorantha. Even if you're not religious, if you're like an agnostic or atheist, and of course an atheist in Glorantha isn't quite the same as on Earth, because on Earth you can be an atheist and say, well, there isn't any God. In Glorantha, you can't really do that because someone will say, well, look, my God gives me a lightning bolt, see, and then he fries you. But what you can do is say, well, you worship this powerful spirit, but it's not worthy of being worshipped. It's just a big, powerful spirit. Um, uh, so, uh, so that's kind of the idea behind that. So religion's always important in Glorantha, and all the religions have a before time history. At least they used to in the cult thing that explained what happened before time. And so in Glorantha the Gods War, you're actually in that before time began, and you're doing the things they did. So that's kind of some of the fun. Now, um, a two-player game uses an AI for chaos. Well, why wouldn't you want to be chaos and have everyone else have a AI? What were the ducks doing in the Gods War? The ducks were trying to survive like everyone else. I mean, there used to be a giant empire called, well, not giant, but a middling empire called Ganderland. The ducks were sort of a combination, were sort of a mutation of sky with sea to make an intermediate thing. And of course, we have the ducks in the Gods War because they're totally one of the elder races you can ally with. Um, so the gods and gods were different and new. What was my design brief for Humak? Well, what I was doing for Humak was I said there's a lot of cultures that worship or know about Humak that aren't the Orlanthi, and we'll treat them different. And we'll think of him as the god of death, not just the god of warriors. So I said I want him to look like the god of death, and I know his weapon is the sword. I gave him the super sword. We gave him a suit of armor that looks like a skull, and around him are corpses trying to come back, and they're not his friends. He hates undead, but he's the barrier between life and death, where he keeps you dead, and that's what Humak Hubach did. And worship of Zorak-Saran is a corrupted form of worship for another god from another culture. Well, the trolls will tell you that Zorak-Saran was from the start, and that he got the fire powers that he has by conquering a sky god. So that's what the trolls say, and that's pretty much also what the sky gods say. So you can say they're both lying, or you can uh, try to figure it out. So that's the Zork-Saran. The Zork-Saran, of course, is also known to be the most hideous of all the darkness gods, because he was the one that most opposed Sky and the sun, and was scarred and damaged by him when the sun appeared. His flesh was ripped off his bones. So we have him look not quite like it, but he's also associated with undead. So we have him look like a burned, like a cremander kind of thing, and and he is represented differently, but he is the guy. I mean, his afterlife is literally that you are a zombie, right? And he is the god of troll undead, and he is supposed to be hideous. So I didn't want a big strong troll with the mace. I wanted a hideous monster troll. Now his figure is skinny in some ways because he's bony and stuff, but he is a large figure, so he looks scary. Um, and does the things he does. So all the gods, there's reasons why all of them look the way they do. For example, one of the gods, I think is it Natha that has 7 heads, or Rasharana? I think it's Rasharana. Rasharana we gave her 7 heads in a sense. She has 5 heads on her shoulders, and all the magic gods. We wanted to be able to remind you if they're magic gods. They all have something in their hand they're holding up. So she's holding up one of her heads in her hand to look at, and then that's a 6th head. And then the question is, where's the 7th head? And the 7th head is secret. You can't see it. That's how it is. Yeah, Rasharana has 7 heads. But on the figure we made, you only see 6 because the 7th is secret. Because there's always a secret to the moon gods. They always have something like that. So that was the thing. So one of the questions that I have from someone is, why did I do this game of Gods War? And I will be totally frank. So my plan was originally, I'd done the game Cthulhu Wars, which I have been told is a fabulous asymmetrical strategy game that doesn't take long to play. So I thought, this is a really fun game. I wonder if it would appeal if I made like a fantasy Stoltze got it, like the dagger behind the assassin's back, around. That's true. So like a fantasy version of Cthulhu Wars. So instead of being like Cthulhu monsters, there would be like dragons and elves and hobbits and things like that, lizard men maybe. So I started putting together this game, and I got a little ways along with it, and then I went to Gen Con, and I was talking with Jeff Richard, who was supposed to show up and I guess never did, and some other people. And well, he shows up. He showed up at Gen Con. He wasn't here on this thing. And they said, you should totally do your fantasy game based in Glorantha. And Greg was there too. And I said, well, what do you think? You think people know about it? And they said yes. So they egged me on. And I was kind of an easy sell because I loved Glorantha, and I developed it for years and years. So, and also it helped me get an idea about the game, because one of the things about doing Cthulhu Wars is that it's extremely thematic. When you play Cthulhu Wars and you're the yellow sign, you feel like you're this crazy uh, bipolar obsessive creature that's going around doing these bizarre things. When you're Cthulhu, you feel like the apex predator. When you're the sleeper, you feel like you're kind of laid back and kind of not lazy, but lazy, but like you do things kind of on your own way. Everyone feels like what they're supposed to feel like. And so just doing a generic fantasy game, I wasn't sure what the feel should be for these things, and effectively I was trying to make up my own world. But by using Glorantha, I already had a world that I could use that had a background and a personality. So I knew what Earth was supposed to feel like. I knew what chaos was supposed to feel like. Earth was supposed to have big, clumsy monsters that are hard to control, but if you can use them right, they're really strong. And also have allies among all the other gods. Chaos was supposed to be raw terror that doesn't care if he dies. He just wants everything to die. Storm was going to be a bully, so it all kind of worked out. And by doing that, I had a background that I knew. I didn't have to spend time working out the background because I had it. I just did the game, and I don't browbeat anyone with the background. It's just there. You just as you play it, you figure out what's going on, and and it works, which is part of the fun. So what you ended up with is a highly thematic game that's completely asymmetrical and takes only a couple hours to play, and has lots of tricks and turns and twists. Um, Earth is not really a sister pantheon to Storm, because the way Earth works, because the sky gods claim that they have Earth wives, and the storm gods claim they have Earth wives, and the moon gods have Earth goddesses attached, and everyone has an Earth goddess attached. So everyone thinks that Earth is like the inferior sister pantheon. And so the way I did this in the game is I had Earth have all their different Earth goddesses that they could sell off to the other players, so everyone gets a little bit of Earth. Everyone's getting power from Earth, and everyone has a wife that's Earth, and everyone is playing with Earth, and so everyone like kind of is an ally to Earth. But then if Earth gets too strong, then you have to go and stomp on them too. So that's how it works. So Ninth Laird and Stoltzy92 have trouble getting players. While I feel for you, uh, uh, I will say that if you take um, uh, God's War and you take it to a local convention or a game store and you open it up, that it really catches people's eyes, and they come back and what's this? What's this? Say it only takes 12, 15 minutes to learn how to play. Take a couple, and then it's a game that brings in players. The Cthulhu Wars does this too, of course. The disadvantage is that it looks like a game that takes a really long time to play, but it's not. So you have to get over that hurdle by saying, I know God's War looks like it takes 8 hours to play. It takes 2 hours to play, maybe 2.5 or 3 if you have 5 or 6 players, but it doesn't take up your whole evening. It moves right along. There's always stuff to do. Even when you're doing the cooperatives, actually the council phase in some ways I think is an improvement on Cthulhu Wars Doom phase, because during the Doom phase, just everyone takes turns adding up their Doom points and doing their abilities. But in the council phase, you also are always interacting with people, so there's always something going on. One of the things I did in the Gods War that I'm kind of proud of is that there's the action phase when you do actions, there's the power phase, and the feature of the power phase is that all the things that trigger the power phase are all things that you don't have to interact with the other players to do. They're all independent. You know, Darkness, for example, one of her things is that she's able to get free trolls in the power phase, so she just gets her trolls and she doesn't have to tell anyone about it. She just grabs her trolls, puts them on the map. And then in the council phase, all the abilities that trigger in the council phase are things that um, you you have to tell someone else about. So, for example, Earth's ability of you get a power if you have an Earth Queen. She has to say, "Hey, I'm triggering the Earth Queen's power. Who's got an Earth Queen? Y'all get power, and I get power too." And so that's an interactive one. So that's how that works. So the power phase usually is pretty fast because you don't have to do anything. It is more complicated than Cthulhu Wars, I think, by a bit, but it's not amazingly complicated. And one of the things that we've done is a friend of mine, Nicholas Lloyd, he does the Lindy Beige YouTube thing. He was one of the players last Monday. In fact, he won his Darkness and trounced everyone. I would say because I'm hoping for a closer enemy, but he beat them all. So um, there is so anyway, Lindy Beige put together a introduction to the Gods War to help people get started, and so we're going to put that in the game, so that'll be nice. Avalon Tears wants to know the new faction. Well, I have kind of developed a new faction for it, but I don't know when it will be released. Basically, it's the Dragon faction, so it's in my mind. Um, and we'll see if that ever sees the light of day. It kind of depends on how well this does. But I do have a new faction, so they aren't all represented because I don't have a dragon faction. So there it is. I do have all the powerful elemental factions though. So the Gods War is only 2 boxes. Yes. So, well, I mean, there's already dragons in the game, right? I have a bunch of different dragons. I have dragon newts, and I have which I guess you wouldn't get to have the dragon newts if I added a dragon faction, they'd have to go away. But I have the 3 cosmic dragons, and we have the new dragon that's the greater god figure for or the dragon rune. Um, when you get the dragon rune in the Glorantha of the Gods War, then it places a dragon on the map, and it used to be just a counter. And so, but I was plagued by my son until I agreed to let it be a little figure, so it's a dragon. One of the things I do with the dragons is dragons are so fundamental to the creation of the universe that it's not like in most games where there's like one kind of dragon. It's like the dragons are all really different in Glorantha. And so what I did was with the three dragons that are the monsters, I have the black dragon, the brown dragon, the red dragon. I had each of them have a different number of limbs, so that the brown dragon had three pairs of legs, 6 legs and 2 wings, and the black dragon had 4 legs and 2 wings, and the red dragon had only 2 legs and 2 wings. So they each were like from a different evolutionary branch or a different phylum. And then for the dragon that I play in, that you get in the as the figure for the dragon rune, it has no legs; it only has wings. So they are there, and so that's how it is. Well, the buildings are a box. You can, depending on how you pack them. I've been able to pack them into the core game in the Empires box, but probably not everyone can do that. I'm more willing to throw them in and not worry about them because I don't paint my figures. Um, and also, it's probably easier for me to get a replacement if I break something. So um, they are heavy. But to be fair, I mean, the Gods War has a lot of large, imposing figures. I think it is easier to cart around than Cthulhu Wars. Where did Crag Spider from? So Crag Spider, um, uh, she was a troll originally who worshipped um, who worshipped the goddess Arachne Solara, who's the spider that rules the universe that is Glorantha. And she got fire powers out of it because that's the opposite of darkness. That was like her trick. And she kind of changed form to look like Arachne Solara. She has a spider body and a spider. She's like a spider centaur kind of thing. So I've heard people say, "Oh, look, they're copying the Drow for LOL from the D&D," but the spider women in Glorantha like predate the D&D use of them by like years. So I mean, Glorantha had it first. Anyway, there you are. So she is still around. She never died, and she's still around in the third age of Glorantha as a character. And if you play the game Dragon Pass, she's a figure in Dragon Pass and does things, and she's impossible to destroy, and she's there. So there it is. Um, so that's where Crag Spider came from. Is she is a hero, and that's why she's a hero. Each set, except for Chaos, of course, and the it gets a hero. And I didn't give heroes to the Invisible God in the original game because I knew that they had saints instead. And now, with the advent of the the new gods that I've got for God's War, now they have 3 saints they can play, and their saints, Malkion, Zemela, and well, Zabor's not really a saint, but he's a hero. These are not gods like everyone else's greater gods. They only get saints for they're heroes in effect for the visible god. So invisible god still has no greater gods, or they're invisible and intangible. Will the gods of Vivamort and Thanatar make an appearance? Well, Thanatar almost made it into the game, um, but he did not because we decided we wanted Cacodemon, Kajavor, and Whackboth instead. Maybe someday. Vivamort, of course, didn't really do much in the god time. He's just the god of vampires. Then we don't have vampires because really, the way gods were in our board game works right now, vampires. What would Thanatar have been? He would have probably been we probably had him instead of Cacodemon. I think Cacodemon is the magic god of chaos, so he'd have been the magic god, and he would have stolen knowledge. I think I had him for a while, stealing knowledge from other players, and it made for a lot of exceptions and complicated things, and it wasn't that fun, and it didn't seem chaosy, to be stealing the way I was doing it at least. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do Cacodemon and just give you ogres. Well, Thanatar is not just the head taker. Thanatar is 2 different gods. One of them is the one that takes heads, and the other one is the one that steals knowledge. Like, for example, they have a spell that will read a book and memorize it, but it wipes the book clean. So, like, your library's gone. And then they put them together. Glorantha the Gods War landmark expansion. You mean like adding the block and the Dragon Palace and stuff like that. I guess we could. Um, so and Whackmoth and Kajibor had to go in. How balanced are all the races? Are you talking about the empires? Oh, Chaos Invisible. Okay, so when we released the game in originally, there was basically the feedback I got from people that cared the most about balance was that darkness seemed a little bit weak, and that Invisible God seemed a little bit strong. And which surprised me because in our games that we playtested with lots of guys, we hadn't had experience. Now, part of the reason we may have had that experience is because our darkness player really liked darkness and played it all the time and it was really good. And so we we probably didn't think enough about what an ordinary person would be like playing darkness. And Invisible God never did that well in our test, but people are saying that they were doing well. So in the redo here that we have now, we gave darkness some perks. So they're a little stronger, and we play tested these, and we gave Invisible God a very simple drawback, which is each time he gets a gift, he has to spend either a victory point or a power, his choice. So this can cost him, but he can still get the gifts. So now they are no longer advantages. And Chaos never did have an advantage in the playtesting that we did. Chaos, even in the online stuff, that basically what everyone said is all the factions are equal except Darkness seems weak, Invisible God came strong. So we gave Invisible God a new choice. So it's not just, oh, we're nerfing Invisible God. Invisible God got a choice, but the choices did bring it down a little bit. And then Darkness over here got some things that made it a little easier. And they also made it feel more like Darkness, because one of the things that got was that it is one of what we do with Darkness is they had the ability that we had them capture other people's figures and hold them hostage until they got enough to get the Darkness boost. Well, sometimes that turned more into them, we must hold everyone hostage, and it became irksome. So we decreased the number of figures they had to hold. So they felt more like they're stealing you guys for a bit, and then they get their power. And also with Darkness, we made the Castle of Lead easier to create, so they more often have it, and they feel, oh, I'm Darkness, I have the Castle of Lead, so it's a big thing. Um, so that's how that works. And Invisible God, like I said, now they have now they have more of a decision to make when they're getting their spell books. So well, the thing is, the only reason people, yeah, well, okay, look into the art. Why isn't Zabor's skin blue? Well, Zabor doesn't have blue skin. He's not a Videli. He's a Berthini. So I guess now Zabor did the Blue Book of Zabor. Maybe that's what you're referring to, Hazmat Sam. That he has the Blue Book of Zabor, which is in the skin of a blue Videli, and that's blue. But I don't recall Zabor's skin being blue. Um, if the, so that is why Zabor's skin isn't blue. He's a Berthini. He would have very pale white. Now the Videli are the ancient enemies of the Malchioni. They lived on the same island of Brethos, but they did not follow Malchion's plan. They were enemies, yeah. So there were wizards. The blue Videli were wizards that have blue skin. They had blue Videli, brown Videli, and red Videli. And the red Videli were like the workers, and the blue Videli, mostly fishermen for the Videli, but right. And then the red Videli are the warriors, and the blue Videli were the noblemen. And they didn't have a sorcerer class because all of them could do magic. The Berthini, however, had workers who had white skin, and they had warriors who had white skin, and they had wizards who had white skin, and they had um, lords who had white skin, and they all were white. So that's what it is. So let's see. So mostly balanced playing through. Yes, if you play through the game several times, you will find strategy. I mean, like all of my games, the more a veteran will beat a new player generally, unless there's someone coaching you. Um, and you'll get better as you go along. It's not a game that is determined by chance. I think we've done some fun things with it. I mean, one of the things I'm really proud of in the Gods War is the Chaos Rift, in fact, which is I think one of the best. I'm fascinated personally by the Prisoner's Dilemma, which you may know, which is the thing like, well, you and your buddy are both in prison, and if one of you narcs on the other guy, you'll get a lower sentence. But if you both narc, you get a worse sentence. And if neither of you narc, then you get the best possible deal. But if you narc and he doesn't, then you get even a better deal. So you have to be concerned about it. So I've been fascinated by the prisoner's dilemma, and so I managed to get a multiplayer prisoner's dilemma in the chaos rift, where everyone is like, how much power shall I spend to close the rift? And if I spend too much, then I'm suckier for the next round. But maybe we get to close the rift. And one of the fun things that comes out of it is almost every game, there's one die roll where the chaos rift has like it fails to close by one or 2 points. Like on Sunday, that's what we happened. Or not Sunday, Friday, last Monday, we had one of the chaos rifts that they had to get a 19 to close it, and they got, I believe, 19, maybe it was 18, but they were so close to closing. They barely didn't do it. So Hazmat Sam, Invisible God is basically an Aristotelian prime mover. He's kind of like that. It sort of depends on which Malchione branch you come from. If you're Berthini, he's absolutely just the prime mover. He's not going to do anything with you. He started the universe and went away, and no one cares about him. If you're a Malchione, then you believe he still has interest in the world, though he doesn't take direct action. So they're kind of like, they think there's a heaven that you can go to, and that there's people, but he doesn't. There's not miracles that he does. But then of course, there's more superstitious Malchione to think that the Invisible God does lots of things. So our chaos rush are higher than yours. Miss you got was level. Well, it depends how many players you have, because the number of dice is the number of players. So if you have 5 players, then you're gonna have a lot of dice. If you have only 4 players, then not so many. If you have 3 players, it's only 3 dice, so 11's not much. So there's that goes. Well, thank you, Cryogenic. I think you'll find it really fun. I mean, I think a lot of people like asymmetric strategy games, which this is, and I think the art we've done for the gods. Most of these gods were never drawn before for Glorantha. There weren't images of these anywhere, or if there were, then Orlanth just looked like a Viking with a sword, and it was okay, but not that cool. And I wanted the gods to not be human, to look fantastic. In fact, there's a little story about Orlanth. So, of course, the Orlanth we have in the game is like formed of whirling funnels of storm, and he's got 3 arms on one side and 2 on the other, and they're all full of weapons, and lightning bolts are going everywhere, and he's this bizarre-looking, monstrous creature. And one of the most famous Gloranthan artists is a guy called Dan Barker, who's actually a friend of mine. And so we said, Dan, I want you to draw the concept art for Orlanth. And he was like, oh, I don't want to do Orlanth. He's going to be boring because he's going to be the... And I said, no, you don't understand. I want Orlanth to look, and I describe what I just described. 3 arms on one side. And that's actually part of the theme, is that he is not in balance. The moon goddess has a balanced number of arms, like a Hindu deity. Storm god doesn't, because he's not balanced. He is unbalanced and dynamic with the storms. And then Dan Barker got all excited about the Storm Bull, and he did it. So it was good. So, someone wants Ratar to be in the game. Well, I have a lot of gods in the game. I have like 30, 35 gods in the game, and maybe someday there'll be more, but already I have a lot. I can't have, not every god can I fit in, just like not every elder race. So I don't have, actually some of the elder race I would like to fit in are ones that have kind of gone extinct, in like the Hular, and the various things like that. There's the first men of Pameltella, who were made of rock, and if they drink water, then they die. Well, actually, they become mortal, so they didn't want to drink, right? So of course, the creation myth of the people from the southern continent of Glorantha are again based on the world being destroyed. And so what they said was, so everyone started as these immortal earth creatures, and then if they drink water, they can now reproduce, but they also will die. So the humans did this, and they became ordinary humans that can now reproduce, and you can make more people to replace yourself, so you don't go extinct. But some of the people didn't do it, and they stayed the immortal earth things. But in the typical Glorantha take on it, these guys who didn't do it aren't like the wise ancient masters we love. They're horrible, selfish pigs who didn't want to who were afraid to die, so they were bad. So that's that theme there. So anyway, so in the game, people hate chaos because chaos is a terrifying force that you can't win against, because if you go after chaos and you kill all of his monsters, he goes, yay! The death rate went way up. I love this. And so you're like, ah! How do I stop him? And also, he's got his chaos nest all around you, and then he's all snarky about it. He goes, "I'm not going to hurt you. I want my chaos nest to be there to feed off your stuff. I don't want you to kill it. And then if you kill it, you get nothing. I mean, if you attack darkness or sky, at least you can conquer their shrine and take it over. You attack chaos, you get nothing for it. He only destroys things. You never get any benefit from chaos. So that was the thing. Yeah, Orlanth was the leader of the Lightbringers, Ninth Laird. So in game terms, if we were to take the Gods War game and try to reproduce the myths of the people, you would have Orlanth be the guy who goes to hell to get the sun out. And this is reproduced in Glorantha the Gods War because if you're playing the game, let's say you're playing the regular 4-player game, well, you have chaos and you have darkness and you have storm and you have sun, and sun says, "Get me out of hell." Well, darkness could get you out of hell, but they only have one unit with a combat of, they have to have combat of more than one to let the sun get out of hell. Well, all the units have a combat of one except for Kyger Leader, and she really has better things to do than let the sun get out of hell. So usually they just let you rot. The first chaos guy you get that can let you out of hell is Thed, and the Magna Mater, and Chaos doesn't want to put the Magna Mater in hell. She's got things to do too, right? So she's there, but Orlanth, or the Storm God, he has units. He has his champion, and he has his god, and they can go to hell and they can get out again with their special abilities. So he actually is the person that I would say maybe 40-50% of the time in a game, he's the one that gets you out of hell. Earth could do it, but they have to send, like, they don't want to send one of their titans there. They could send their hero. Usually it's a hero you got to send, or a greater god. And Earth doesn't really want to send the titans because they can get killed. And again, they have other things to do besides let you out of hell. So no one really wants to let you out of hell. But of course you can bribe them and bully them. But I would say that Storm is the one that does it more than any other empire. So that's how it is. So that's the deal. So the other Lightbringers, so Ninth Laird, Humach and Yelm are not part of the Lightbringers. It's Humach, Shalana Arroy, Lanker Mai, the Trickster. Yeah, here I am going. I wish Jeff was here. There's the Secret Ginna Jar. No one knows much about her. There's Fleshman, and there's someone I'm forgetting offhand. But I'm not going to look it up because that would be cheating. But Orlanth, Lankermai, Trickster. Yeah, Fabian, who am I forgetting? There's Ginnajar and there's Fleshman. I remember Fleshman. He's the guy that starts the whole thing. Oh, Isseries. What am I thinking? Isseries is the Lightbringer. So there it is. Got all 7. So, and then Orlanth and Lankermai. So Lankermai and Isseries and Shalana Uroi weren't really part of the Storm Pantheon before the Lightbringer quest, and then they kind of got adopted into it. So so someone complained that, or someone said, "How come Shalana Uroi is a sky god instead of a darkness god?" So, well, Shalana Uroi is totally a goddess of light. Okay, but she's associated with Storm now because she went on the Lightbringer quest. But yeah, there they are. That's all the characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You left out Ginnajar, but Ginnajar doesn't really go on the quest. She just gets them together to get it started. I think she shows up a few times on the quest to be all mysterious and dark. Shalana Uroi is the healer, and Lanker Mai is the scholar. Isseries is the guide. Isseries, well, Lanker Mai is the god of wisdom. We don't have Isseries in the game, because we can have all the gods, but I think the gods I picked for Storm were good ones. I mean, the Storm Bull is the war god. You got to have Storm Bull. I picked Lanker Mai for the secret god for Storm because he's the goddess of wisdom, singer of the songs of the gods. And then for their magic one, I decided to pick Vadris because Vadris I've always found as an interesting god. He's like the bad Storm god, and I had some really cool abilities for Vadris to use in the game. And also because Vadris is a cool thing to have because Vadris, according to the mythology, is killed off by chaos and never brought back. So in God's War terms, there would have been an attack by chaos in which they used their oblivion power against Vadris, and Storm chose to let Vadris die rather than give chaos a rune. So there it is. So all the gods. So the gods are based on what Greg Stafford and to a lesser extent me made up during the 1970s and 80s. And so none of these names are original with me. They all come from all this background, a wealth of material. Um, so that's where the names come from. Cryogenic. They're all based on they are based on a real history of Gotham. Here's an interesting story about Greg. So Greg Stafford is growing up in the 60s, and going to college in the 70s. I don't know if he went to college very long. Mostly, I think he was a belt buckle salesman or something. But Stormbolt, Vadris, and Humok are Orlanth brothers. That is correct. There was 5 storm gods. One of them was Kolot. But Kolot kind of dissipated into storms and wasn't around anymore. So Greg started reading mythology, and he read myths of the Norse and myths of the Sumerians and myths of the Greeks, and he loved mythology. He read about all these ancient myths and just thought they were the best thing ever. And he started writing stories based on the myths. Let's see, who is Storm's champion? There's always some hero of Storm to go do things. I believe that Jeff thinks that the Storm champion of the game is Vincott. So that could be it. But I just had to him be a champion, a guy riding a Storm Bull, because the Storm, if you're a heroic race based on single combat, you're gonna have someone as a champion. Anyway, so Greg read all this mythology stuff, and then he wasn't until he was in his 20s that he found this book in a bookstore, and I think it was Elric of Melniboné, the book Stormbringer, and he goes, "Oh, people are writing myths." He didn't read any fantasy. He didn't read Lord of the Rings. He didn't read about Conan the Barbarian. He had no idea there was modern fantasy books. He only read this ancient mythic stuff. So he liked the modern fantasy, but kind of his mind had already been set up. So when he wrote his stories and started doing games, they were all mythically based instead of fantasy based. And that's one of the reasons Glorantha is the way it is. It's so odd. So that's where that comes from. So I thought it was interesting that that's where Glorantha comes from. That's one of the reasons Glorantha is a unique world that feels really different. I mean, there's a lot of fantasy worlds you can play, and they're kind of like all different. The Elfstones of Shannara versus the Lord of the Rings versus Conan. Or maybe Conan's a little bit different, but they all kind of unless you go into the real details, they kind of merge together. But Glorantha is something that's not the same. Because about the prehistory of Glorantha, you care about them, and the gods matter. If you're playing the game, well, I love Elric and I love Conan. I'm not saying these are bad things. I read them when I was a kid, but Greg didn't. So he just his stuff is based on the story. He'd look up things one of the things he realized is that almost every ancient culture, the king of the gods was either a storm god or he was a sun god. That was how it worked. And if it was the sun god, then the storm god was really unimportant. And if it was a storm god, then the sun god was relatively unimportant. Like, for example, with the Greeks, the king is a storm god, Zeus, and Apollo's important, but his importance is mostly not based on him being the sun, but being the god of wisdom and song and things like that. And although there is a minor sun god for the Norse, is not much. And then you have Ra, who's a sun god, and then I don't even know who the storm god is for the Egyptians. He's nothing, So Greg posited that in his world he would have cultures with sun god and storm, and they would be bitter enemies, and that's why their opposite number is weak. So that's how it worked. So Glorantha didn't have Lord of the Rings. It didn't have Conan. There's no orcs. In fact, I said, let's have orcs in Glorantha, and he says no. And there were certain things he wouldn't have. He would say, we can't have this. There are no orcs. There are no. And so I was doing my game, and I was doing a thing for him, and I had polar bears, and he said, nope, there's no polar bears. I said, polar bears? Why aren't there polar bears? I found out later it's because I know Helios was the sun in ancient Greece, but Apollo was very much the sun god in ancient Greece. Oh yeah, the elves and dwarfs are nothing they're not like Tolkien's elves and dwarfs very much. His elves are literally humanoid plants. Their bones are made of wood. They think of them. They have kind of a group thing where they're part of the forest and they work with the forest. They're not just superior humans. They're weird. They don't really care if they die, even self-preservation. And then the dwarfs are creatures from under the ground that are mechanistically minded, and they're much more like Norse dwarfs, where they're the workers. They get down there and they make magic swords and they make gunpowder and they make weird things. And I guess the closest thing to them in regular fantasy would be they're like Saruman's orcs that are making their evil satanic mills in and that's the background of the dwarfs in Glorantha. So they're weird. And one of the things about the dwarfs is most dwarfs stay underground working at the job. So if your job as a dwarf is to make alarm clocks, which they probably don't need because they know when to wake up. But say your job is to make hinges. So for 2,000 years, all you've done, because you never die as a dwarf, you've just made hinges, and that's it. And you're perfectly happy. Every once in a while, a dwarf breaks and says, "There's got to be more than life than making hinges." And they go into the surface world, and these are the dwarfs that become adventurers in the Glorantha game. So that's how it is. So the ducks, yes. So the story behind the ducks was that Greg Stafford is doing his very first Glorantha game, which, by the way, Glorantha didn't start as a role-playing world, started as a board game world. So I've kind of brought it back to that with Glorantha the Gods War. But the first one was just a little part of Glorantha, and it was called A White Bear, Red Moon. It was and Greg had to name a bunch of cities on the map that he had to have them for the game. He'd never named before. So he said to his friends, "Hey, you guys get to name some cities. What's this city?" And his friend said, "That's Duckburg," because the guy thought that would be funny because he liked Donald Duck. And so Greg said, "We can't call it Duckburg. We'll call it Duck Point." And the friend said, "Well, okay, but there's ducks." And that's literally where the ducks came from in Glorantha, because Steve Perrin then said we need to have other human races, and so he made the ducks. And then Duck Point happened to be really near to Delecti's Marsh, where there was this immortal necromancer kind of being living there that made vampires and zombies and bad things. And so but also Steve Perrin, who was doing some of the background for the games and the cults, like a lot of the cults, like if you're a troll, you're better off in Zork's-Ran. If you're an elf, you're better off in everyone has cults they're in. So he wanted to give the ducks some cult that was better for them. So he thought it'd be funny if the ducks had edges in joining death cults, the war cults. So warrior ducks, right? And so he sent him in to be he had him be that. And then Greg said, "Oh, well, they're death cults. They're right here by Delecti, the undead guy in the marsh. So of course they go and they fight the undead all the time." And so then the other result is that the Delecti is constantly killing ducks whenever he can and turning them into zombie ducks. And I said, "Why are you making zombie ducks?" And Greg said, "Can you imagine anything less terrifying than a zombie duck?" And I said, "That makes sense. So they're zombie ducks." And so that's how it works. And the duck counters in Dragon Pass are hilarious. And there's another story about ducks. So, by the way, of course, there's ducks in the Gods War game, and they have a combat of 0, just like you'd expect. But in the 80s, we had a gal who was a really good artist working with us, and Lisa Free actually. And so we said we need the figures. We're going to do top-down counters for our creatures. And she said, "Okay." So we have trolls and orcs, and then she did ducks, and she made the ducks like anatomically correct ducks. Not that they had genitals, but that they had the right proportions for a duck. I mean, they had hands and stuff, but they were basically like regular ducks. And Greg said, "These are unacceptable, Lisa." And she said, "Why? This is what ducks look like." I said, "Because nobody wants to play this kind of duck. They want to be Howard the Duck. They want to be Daffy Duck. They want to be Donald Duck. They want to be ducks with teeth that have big cigars." And because there's no point in being like an accurate duck, and so that was what they did. So they want to be a Janelle Jakeways now, but back when he was Paul, he did a bunch of duck art for the game, and they were the perfect ducks. That's the ducks everyone wants to play. So that's the ducks. And so of course, even though the ducks are actually not a very important elder race, I had to put them in the game. So there it is. Yeah, Lisa is a great lady, but she didn't often fumble, and it wasn't really her fault. She was trying to make the ducks look right, and she had no idea that Greg would say, "No, got to be Daffy." So there it is. So we had a duck in our campaign called Blackbeak, who was a pirate duck, and of course he had a little goatee because he was because pirates have beards, And we never answered the question of how a duck had a beard. It didn't matter. He's a duck. He has a beard. So so the ducks in the game have oh, and the names of the ducks in Dragon Pass on the back of it has the names that you just over. It says Dragon Rider or Silver Swords, but there's 3 duck counters. The first says ducks, the second one is ducks, and the third one is more ducks. So that's what it is. What do I like the most about Glorantha? My favorite thing about Glorantha is that when I play Glorantha, I feel like I am in a weird mystical world. There's always stuff going on under the surface that I can find out about. And there's also stuff on the surface that's bizarre, where there's huge, powerful magic things that do stuff. Where you know, where I can go and I can see like a huge mountain that goes up into the sky, so I can climb the mountain and walk onto the sky dome. You know, so there it is. So what Rhino was called Linebreaker, and he was Duffy. Fine, Duffy the Linebreaker. Well, Greg Stafford also made the point once. He said, you know, there's probably only about 30,000 ducks in all of Glorantha, so every single duck has been portrayed by a human player and been killed. So I guess they're extinct. Probably also true of hobbits in Lord of the Rings. Tell us stories from my RuneQuest campaign at Chaosium. Okay, here's a story of Greg Stafford playing RuneQuest. So we were going into the depths and the darks of the horrible chaos nest of Duraster. Oh yes, Tulsa. I said Marangor is the goddess of dinosaurs because they're the Earthshakers. And Greg is the one that told me that. I said, "What's the sacred beast of Marangor?" He said, "Dinosaurs." I said, "Why dinosaurs?" And he said, "Because they shake the earth." I said, "That makes so much sense." So Marangor looks like a dinosaur. And thank you. I was very proud of that. So anyway, so we're going into thing, and one of the players was kind of a jerk, and he said he wasn't one of the Cassian people, but he came along and he said, "I have a magical hat that has 25 points of armor." And Greg said, "What?" And he says, "Yes." And I have this, and he had all these amazing abilities. And then we said, "We're going to go off on the quest." And he said, "I'm coming too." And Greg says, "I should be the leader because my dad was a tribal council leader, so I know about being a leader." And the other guy said, "I should be the leader because I have a 90% skill with my sword." And then no one cared. So they went off into the thing. And we came across some awful, unkillable monster that they have, some chaos thing that is just that if you cut off its arm, then the arm keeps attacking you separately. And it's just this terrible thing. So we're fighting it. And Greg's character was a Stormbull worshiper. And so he had the spell Face Chaos, that if you cast it on someone, they stand bravely and face chaos. So we're fighting this monster for a while, and eventually it becomes clear that we're not going to kill this thing. It's just too much for us. So the player says, "I'm going to run away." So Greg goes, "Face Chaos." And he says, "I want to run away anywhere." The game master says, "Nope. You gotta go fight the chaos monster because you have face chaos. You can't run away." So he goes, "Oh no!" And he went back and he fought the monster, and he was so tough. He lasted for 15 minutes, which is how long the spell lasts. And remember, 1 round of combat in RuneQuest is 1 minute, so this is like a long fight. 15 rounds of combat is huge for RuneQuest. So he's lasted 15 minutes against him, and then said, "Okay, it's over. Now I'm running away." And then Greg said, "Face Chaos," and he goes, "No!" And he goes back to fight it. And then the second 15 minutes, sometime in the middle of it, he died. And he said, "Why did you do that? Why did you get me killed?" And Greg said, "Well, I never saw a 25-point armor hat before." And so he's like, "What?" And then Greg took the hat, and we all fought over it, and the monster went and wandered away after eating his body. So so that was a story about Greg and that. And I love Marangor looking like a dinosaur too. I think you will like the what Arthur, are you still there? What other earth goddesses do we have showing up? I think we've shown Asrilia, right? The one that comes out of the treasure chest with the goddess of wealth.
Babeaster.
Have we shown Babeaster Gore yet?
I don't know.
The Earth Avenger?
No idea.
I'm asking Arthur, Lincoln. I don't know if we've shown her yet, but we're gonna show all the gods, all the Detroit. Okay, so she's gonna come. We've talked about how she's one of the gods, Babeaster Gore, but you're gonna see her ability to, and it's cool, like Marangor and Asrilia, of course. In fact, I like Babeaster Gore so much that on the cover of the War Gods box, she's the War God fighting Stormbull. So pretty cool. And in fact, if you put the 3 boxes together of the secret magic and secret war and magic gods, the secret gods is on one side. Well, it's on this side, I guess, if my screen's right. And then it shows the secret gods kind of kind of channeling in power to strengthen the guys who are fighting, then or weaken them. Who knows, right? Then it has the two guys fighting who are uh, Barbara Shigor and the Stormbull. Then on the magic god side, I guess over here, they're shooting lightning bolts and magic at them. So everyone's doing something. And Humok looks pretty good, I think, in the game. Basically, I was happy without having Humok in the game, and Fabian, who was posting here, like really wanted Humok, and my son really wanted Humok, and I said, fine, he can be a first player marker. But of course, he's more than a first player marker because we have an ability for him. Now, although Humok was originally a storm god, actually at the time of the Gods War, just before it started, he had cut off his connection with Storm because he was resentful that his brother Orlanth had killed the sun god and used the mighty power of death for something as lame as murder. So Humok is still in the game, but he's not a storm god anymore, and a lot of cultures worship him. And if actually you go in the West, they have a creature they call Humkt, who is like this evil undead monster god, and he's like a deformed version of Humok. So, and now you got a Humok Mini, who's cool. And he has the sword, and he has the ring of hands, and he's got his death-like mask, and he's armored, because he wears armor. Yeah, I know everyone wanted him. Everyone probably wants Trickster too, but you'll just have to deal with that. You do get boggles in the game, which are trickstery. So we aren't completely devoid of Trickster. And the boggles are in the Elder Race pack, for what it's worth. So we have boggles. At one time, I was going to have the Celestial Court in the game, but the problem was that the Celestial Court is killed when the spike explodes, so you only have like the first turn, and it seems like making 10 special gods that go away in 2 turns was kind of a waste. Well, Barbie Strigor has female warriors, and female warriors have to wear armor because they aren't as big and strong as a lot of men. So they have to make up for it with their skill and stealth. So, and also, I didn't want Barbara Strigor to have not much to look like Red Sonja because I don't like it when I'm reading a comic or seeing a movie and like the female warriors have tons of bare skin. It seems lame. So. But you remember the waist deep in Dwarf thing. This is from Sekhmet, who is a highly civilized goddess of the ancient Egyptians, not a barbarian goddess. And I think this holds true to the actual fact, which is that the most destructive and savage and dangerous people in the world are in fact not barbarians, but civilized men. The Assyrians were more awful to conquer you than the Vikings, you know? And the Assyrians were civilized. It wasn't ever barbarians that made giant piles of skulls. It was civilized people. We're the dangerous ones. So that's what I did with Barbara Shigor. Also, remember that Barbara Shigor doesn't have warriors really. She has like 2 or 3 women at the Earth Temple Garden from the bad people, so they have to be tough. So and Sekhmet, yeah. So Greg fessed up. She's based on Sekhmet, you know. So so she's not based on like Amazons or Red Sonja or any of those things because he didn't know about. Well, he knew about Amazons. He didn't know about women warriors. He just knew about Sekhmet, you know. So there she is. And actually, the Elric universe is a cool universe too because it's a very weird universe where there's odd things happening. So you could probably do a good game based on that. Well, Ninth Laird, you'll be happy to hear that I own a set of mummy beads that my friend went to Egypt and who is an archaeologist, and they're not very high quality mummy. I'm sure they have a curse on them, you know. But he brought me a set of mummy beads, so I own some mummy beads. I think they're only about 2,000 years old, so they're probably after the heyday of the ancient Egyptians, probably during Roman times. Maybe Cleopatra was around then. But so I have mummy beads. I also have a vial of dirt from Lovecraft's soil. I have dragon snails. Any plans for other practicing? Well, you got to remember that in the Gods War, Prax is literally Gennert's garden. It's right. That's where Gennert the Titan comes from, and the goodness of Earth. So the awful, monstrous, desolate thing. And what happens in the game, of course, these guys are killed and wiped out, and the world becomes a barren. The place where they were becomes this barren wasteland, and the Praxians who live there now were actually not the golden people that lived under Gennert. they were their allies they brought in to help against chaos and failed to save the day. So the golden people were wiped out. They're the oasis dwellers who are slaves now are descendants of the golden people, and the Praxians they've taken over even though they used to be allies. So there it is. So so that's why we don't have nomads. We could have baboons. I mean, there must have been nomads maybe somewhere. But if I was going to have Praxian nomads be a major character in the game, I'd probably wait until I did like a second or third age game in Glorantha. So how are we doing on time here? Oh, we're over an hour. Okay, I will now take one last question. Oh, the gold wheel dancer. I forgot about that one. Yes. So the gold wheel dancers are actually not directly associated with giants. But the way the giants bred was one of the things they always had when they sent their cradles to hell for the breeding cycle is they had a gold wheel dancer in the thing going with it because they date back from the time of the celestial court where everyone cooperated, so everyone was in there. So so what happened is that during the in the early part of the world there was a bunch of gold wheel dancers, and they gradually all either died or they got turned into coins, literally coins that were gold wheels. That's what the wheels come from, and they were just basically that's like they're dead. They're a wheel, right? So then everyone based money on these wheels, and that was everywhere. And the gold wheel dancers themselves were gone. So in Greg Stafford's campaign, there was a character who was not very smart. He was Urg the Ugly. He had an int of like 4, and he noticed people liked wheels and gold, so he thought that was a god. That'll be his god. So he collected lots of gold and never spent it, and he had tons and tons of gold. And eventually he he prayed to the gold, and he had like 40,000 wheels, this unthinkably vast fortune. So one day he's praying to his gold, and Greg decided that one of the gold in his thing was actually a gold wheel dancer, and his prayer and faith activated it. So it bounced up from the wheel and returned to its full form and danced and said, "Oh, thank you," and then it went away. And of course, when he saw a wheel do that, you were never going to get Urg not worshiping gold again. He was full in on that. But there was one gold wheel dancer that was responded, and then later on, Steve Perrin did the campaign of the cradle coming down, and it's because for 1,500 years there'd been no gold wheel dancers, or no, more like 500 years, and so as soon as one appeared, the giant said, "Yay, a gold wheel dancer!" and they sent it down to hell with the cradle. So that's where that cradle. That's why there's the one cradle after all that time, because they had a gold wheel dancer. And if more people would pray to their money, there'd probably be more of them. But even in Glorantha, it's not as common in Glorantha as it is on Earth. They don't really have the evangelical gospel of greed in the same way. I mean, they want money and they love that, but they don't worship the money. Okay, so you missed the Prince of Sardar comic. Well, me too, but I don't have any control over that. And if Jeff had been here, you could have lambasted him. I remember going to the British Museum and seeing a lot of mummies from Ptolemy's time. I like those a lot. They are pretty cool. Okay, any last questions about Glorantha or the Gods' War or anything else that I do? If not, I will go have supper. One last chance.
Yeah, like a 20-second delay probably. So.
Okay. My son says it's a 20-second delay, so I may have to wait more than 20 seconds.
Plus I have to type it out, so.
You're welcome, sir. Yeah, then my son has to save this out. Okay, this is all going to be saved somewhere and probably put it up tomorrow. So they don't have questions. They said they don't. Bye-bye!